I'm going to start this off by saying that if you have a house and don't have cameras, get cameras. I have some now, but I should have gotten them sooner. I live in a pretty typical manufactured home in Arizona. My parents also live in one just a few streets over. Despite how close we are, I'm very low contact because they are just bad people. They treated me okay as a kid, but things changed as soon as I was in my late teens. I was expected to do more and pay my way as soon as I finished high school. That was fair. I was an adult by then after all. But my parents wanted a lot more in rent than what I'd have to pay to get my own apartment. I'd have had next to nothing left of my monthly paycheck if I'd given them what they wanted. So I refused to give them more than a fair amount, plus a share in utilities. And I started buying my own food as well. My father openly said this was not good enough, and my parents actually filed official paperwork to evict me when I refused to cater to their demands. I left home and got an apartment with my best friend. 5 years later, and I bought my own house in a neighborhood not far from my parents. It's a manufactured home on a small property, but it was so damn cheap that I couldn't turn it down. And my monthly mortgage isn't bad either. I even moved my best friend in to help me cover the bills. We were already used to living in the same space, and the house gave us much more room. I may even let another friend move in to get some more rent money for the mortgage because we've got one room that's actually left unused right now since the house is a 3-bedroom. My parents, though, somehow didn't like my independence from them. Did they want me to fail or something? I don't know. But the incident that caused the very low contact was when they demanded I trade houses with them. Yes, you read that correctly. They actually wanted to trade. Their manufactured home is smaller and older than mine and has one less bedroom, and their yard is smaller too. Not that either of us have any grass. It is Arizona after all. When they first saw my place, they looked pissed. After a couple more visits, my father actually said it wasn't fair that I was doing better than them, and I was rubbing my nicer house in their faces. It's just an old manufactured home in one of the hottest states in the US. Seriously, what's to brag about? But I guess having something even slightly better than what my parents had irked them, and as I've already said, they actually demanded we trade houses because of it. My friend who lives with me literally fell on the couch laughing when they said that, and I couldn't help but join in. My father said it was not funny, and to give him what he wants. When I recovered my composure, I said he and my mother were not entitled to my house, or anything I owned for that matter, and then told them to get the duck out. After that, we've barely spoken. And then the pandemic hit. Didn't really change my life much. I liked the peace and quiet, and my friend knows to leave me alone most of the time. My father, however, got laid off, and he struggled to find another job. He ended up working in the local Mardo Walls for half a year before getting a better paying job. I did get a kick out of seeing him there when I went shopping for groceries. But as much as I hate him, I'm not going to call him a bad employee. He actually did fine. But during that time, he and my mother kept calling me and asking for money. And I know what y'all are thinking. Don't lend them anything. They didn't want loans. They wanted handouts. Why? Because they raised me and I owed them. I said if they didn't want the cost of raising a kid, they shouldn't have had one. A few weeks ago, though, my mother called me begging for money because their dinosaur of a window AC unit finally crapped out. I told them I was not giving them anything, and they were too cheap to replace that old AC unit for a long time, so I wasn't going to buy them a new one. My mother then complained about how I have 2 in my house, and the least I could do is give them one. I then said that maybe if she and my father weren't always pissing away their money on beer and Mary Jane all the time, they'd have the money to buy another AC. Then I said I wasn't giving them one of mine or any money. End of story. Only it wasn't the end of the story. A few days later, I came home from work to find my house had been broken into. My front door locks were drilled out, and both of my window AC units were gone. Nothing else was stolen, but they went out of their way to make a huge mess for some stupid reason. Probably to make it look like a typical robbery or something. I knew it had to have been my parents and called the police. I told police that I heavily suspected my parents of the theft because they act entitled to my stuff, even though I'm a grown man that doesn't live with them. I went with police to my parents' house, and sure enough, they had both my AC units going in their windows. When confronted, my parents, they obviously denied the theft, then claimed they already owned the AC units. But statements from their neighbors said otherwise. But my parents still denied the theft. I bought both AC units used online years ago, which means I had no receipts for them. So I figured my only option was to look for witnesses in my own neighborhood. And as luck would have it, a neighbor across the street has security cameras, and the edge of one of them caught just enough to see my parents showing up in my father's truck. My father could be seen walking with a cordless power drill in hand, and a few minutes later, they came back to the truck with my AC units. Then went back in, to ransack the place, I'm guessing. With this evidence in hand, police had cause to arrest my parents. At first, both of them acted like they'd done nothing wrong, but I convinced police to let me do the talking. I said they could either return the AC units to my home and clean up the mess they made, or I'd let the police arrest them both right there. They'd already stolen from me, lied to the police, trespassed, vandalized my house, broke my front door locks, and there was video evidence of what they'd done. If I pressed charges, they were both going to jail for sure. My parents looked deflated, then asked for a moment to talk with each other in their bedroom. I heard a lot of shouting from both of them, and I could hear my mother yelling that my father was an idiot, and he was trying to blame me in turn. After about 5 minutes of that, they came back out looking even more deflated, and said they'll return the AC units and stop bothering me for money if I didn't press charges. I said they were going to clean up the mess in my house and buy new locks for my front door as well. And then I wanted written apologies from both of them on top of it. They begrudgingly agreed, and even got a police escort back to my house. My father was forced to put the AC units back in my windows, and then left my mother to clean up the huge mess they made while he went out and bought replacement locks for my front door. He was gone about an hour and came back with a new stainless steel lock set to replace the knob and deadbolt. Then he had to help my mother finish cleaning. During this time, I let the two cops just sit and watch them while drinking soda. They said it was very entertaining. After everything was cleaned up, I gave my parents each a piece of paper and a pencil, then told them to write out apologies to me for what they'd done. My father looked especially pissed and said I was treating him like a child. I said he was acting like one and never stopped treating me as a child either. This was just me holding him accountable, and I could have sent him to jail, but I felt like this was better for teaching him a lesson. He then kind of snorted and started writing. My mother wrote out a good apology, but my father's was pretty half-hearted and passive-aggressive. But I didn't care. It seemed to kill him a little inside to have to do it. And when he was done, he left without speaking to me. My mother said she was sorry and she'd leave me alone, then followed after him. The two cops said they thought the whole thing was hilarious and thanked me for giving them an excuse to take a break while on the job before leaving. Not long after, I shelled out to get some cameras for the exterior of my house. So if someone tries to break in again, I'll get it on video. I only have 2 cameras, but added a couple more fake ones that look real enough just to scare people off. I haven't heard a peep from my parents, but their next-door neighbor told me they went and bought a new AC unit. Guess they had the money for one after all. Makes me wonder how high they were when they thought it was a good idea to steal from me. Maybe having lean pockets for a while will teach them. Then again, they are who they are after all. It is funny when narcissistic parents say that you're not entitled to certain things, including your own property. I think it's funny because they're so used to taking what they want and having the what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine attitude. They forget that people can actually fight back and tell them no. Also, I think it's time to go no contact with your parents. For some background, my wife and I have been together for about 7 years and married for 4. We don't have any children together, but have always wanted to. As any other relationship, we've had our ups and downs over the years, but I've always known she was the one. Soon after we got engaged in 2015, our jobs took us to different parts of California, and we decided to pursue a long-distance relationship with the expectation that it wouldn't last longer than a year. She moved to Northern California while I stayed in Southern California. This was a difficult adjustment period, but I was glad to see that she had seemed to settle into a new city on her own. She was enjoying her job and started to make friends at work. We visited each other every month or so to spend some quality time, as well as plan our wedding. A few months before our wedding, I started to notice that she wasn't always herself. She was less communicative and more reluctant to be affectionate during the times we would visit. I thought she was experiencing some stress at work or was nervous about the wedding. Around this time, however, I noticed that she had become particularly close to a male colleague at work. According to her, they would go out for meals together, both during and outside of work hours. When I voiced concern about their friendship, she assured me that it was purely platonic. This colleague became such close friends with my wife that he ended up being invited to our wedding, despite the fact they had just met a few months before. I didn't think much of it since we could accommodate the additional guest, and I wanted to see my wife happy. Soon after the wedding, I accepted a job in Northern California and moved from Southern California to join my wife. Our life in Northern California picked up where we left off in Southern California. The colleague that my wife had invited to the wedding continued to stay close to my wife and was invited to come over to have dinner with us a couple times a month. The only thing that made me particularly suspicious of their friendship was how often they would text. They texted from morning until night, just about every day. I didn't have any concrete evidence that anything more was going on, so I didn't push the situation. In 2018, however, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't until the doctor appointments with her that I found out she had had an A before our wedding. She never mentioned anything about having an A while we were long distance, and the only reason I found out was because the doctor reviewed her medical history. She claims that she didn't want me to worry while we were long distance and had the A since we weren't ready to be parents yet. I was hurt that she didn't even think to include me in the decision, and even more hurt when she confessed that her male colleague had gone with her to the A appointments. I, of course, honored my commitment to stand by her in sickness and in health, and decided I wouldn't let this issue prevent me from helping her through her cancer. Curiosity, however, got the better of me, and I decided to do some digging into messages around the time we were engaged. I found tons and tons of messages and emails sent between her and her colleague confessing their love for one another. It was clear that they had an emotional as well as physical affair. There were messages where they planned sleepovers and of her colleague telling her not to marry me because I could never love her the same way he could. She explained that she had to honor the commitment to marry me, but expressed that no one could ever take his place, not even me. I also found messages where they both said how sad they were that the baby could never be. I feel so betrayed by not only the woman I decided to marry, but the man I welcomed into my home on so many occasions. My wife, however, is still battling cancer, and I can't find the heart to step away in her time of need. Her colleague was very present in the beginning stages of her cancer, but slowly started showing up less and less since he started dating someone new. As far as I know, he and my wife are no longer in contact, so I don't think there's a real possibility of them resuming their affair, especially since he now has a girlfriend. But I'm left with the broken pieces of our past, and I'm trying to put them back together for the sake of my wife's cancer. I just don't know how to move forward from here. How can I support her when she betrayed my trust in such a major way? No one will think less of you for divorcing her. She entered into the marriage under false pretenses. She cheated on you. Hell, you don't even know if she ate your baby or the other guy's. Unfortunately, given that he had no problem attending your wedding and sharing meals with you regularly, I don't think it's safe to assume that the affair won't resume just because he has a girlfriend. The timeline is a little unclear, but it seems like it started in 2015 and continues on for at least 3 years to 2018. That's a pretty long relationship, affair. Not even close to a one-time mistake. It's a betrayal that really needs to be addressed.